Alright, hello guys, welcome back. This is my 2021 Dune movie review. I'm pairing it with both my kind of spoilerish, spoiler-free book review that I'll link in the description below, as will I link my 1984 Dune movie review. This is the most recent attempt of Dune on the big screen. As many of you know, it came out last year. Mind-boggling that it's already 2022, but yeah, it came out like 6 months ago or something. Going into this movie, I knew Zendaya was in this, and I knew Timothée Chalamet was in it, and he was the main character, Paul. And that's all I really knew about this version. I'd heard a few like very spoiler-free reviews of the movie, and so I didn't really have anything ruined for me going into this. And then again, I watched this with my husband, and he went into it only knowing what he had seen in the 1984 movie. So it was a lot of fun to see kind of his reactions to everything. And honestly, I had very mixed expectations for this movie just because of how the 1984 movie went. And so now I'm just going to talk about this movie in terms of a book to movie adaptation and kind of give you my thoughts on how it compares to the earlier movie. Honestly, I was really impressed at how many of the details this kept. You had a lot better character representations with this, just like with Duncan Idaho's death. You really felt that connection between him and Paul a lot more than you did in the first movie, where he was kind of just like a headshot during the initial incursion into the Atreides home. They did a better job at conveying information to the audience, which was really nice, because I know, and a complaint I had about the previous movie is that sometimes they would leave things out and then try to reference to, like, make references later on to those things, and just, unless you'd read the book, you wouldn't necessarily know what was going on. And I did have to explain a few things in the earlier movie to my husband, and this one he didn't really have as many questions, partly because he'd watched the other movie, but also because this one was much better explained. And just overall, more of the story itself was kept. The big thing here is that in the first movie, you do the entire book of Dune from beginning to end, and here they are doing the first part of Dune in one movie, and I think the second part of Dune in another movie. So I think it's going to go over a lot well in terms of like how much of the story is kept, and fans of Dune, the Dune book, will probably appreciate keeping so much of the source material. I know I really enjoyed seeing a lot more of the story involved, and just getting like that really good sense of like Duke Leto, getting a really good sense of the Bene Gesserit, and getting a better sense of Kynes were all very high on my list. I also found that the pacing in this was really consistent with the book. This front half is, while full of action of the Atreides household falling, didn't really have as much like story about the planet Arrakis itself, but they gave you enough to really kind of hook you, which was really awesome. In regards to only using the first part of the book, I am a little torn, because although I think it did a lot of good things in terms of source material, detail, and pacing, it's also kind of I was almost disappointed when we got to the end and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to watch another movie. And it's not because I didn't enjoy this movie, it just caught me off guard given that they had done the entire book in the previous film. And one of the big things here I actually want to compliment the movie on is how they dealt with kind of Paul's visions. In the 1984 film, they did a lot of really interesting choices that I think ultimately kind of hindered Paul's character, because they had so many internal things. They had him monologue on screen over whatever was happening, which was boring. And here I think they did a much better job with those visions. And overall, I do think that in terms of a book-to-movie adaptation, this was a much better movie. And now I'm going to talk about the movie unto itself. As far as movies go, it's what you can expect kind of in this 2021, 2022 big name films, and it's that it's well produced. The cast is very well cast. The acting is top notch, which is not a which is not a compliment I could give to the 1984 movie. And the pacing was just incredibly consistent. Like, I know one of my husband's complaints about 1984 is things were constantly happening, constantly moving forward. You were constantly getting new information, and so it was really hard to reconcile a lot of what was going on because it was going through it too fast. And here that wasn't an issue. And one thing I specifically liked is they weren't big things, but they did have a few kind of call-outs to me to the old movies, just in terms of kind of the inspiration for the shield graphics. And there were a few other things where it's like, oh, that's almost identical to what they used in the first movie. And I don't know if it's just like, oh, this was well done, or if it truly is a call out, but it's a little things that I appreciated watching it. As far as the movie goes, it's a good story. It's well explained, good atmosphere, straightforward, good pacing, and they do a really good job of keeping you engaged with the action versus the more intellectual stuff. And a small complaint for me here is that the dialogue is still pretty stilted, but it was stilted in the book. It was stilted in the 1984 movie. It's because of who the characters are, it's going to be really hard to get away from that. The only benefit in this movie to me with the dialogue is that the actors are seem to be a lot more comfortable in front of the camera, so the acting itself is a lot less stilted, and I think they do a really good job of it. With that dialogue, it's also kind of heavy-handed. Like, although I complimented this movie on its ability to kind of fill the audience in on what's going on, sometimes they would fill us in or give us a hint, and then they'd circle back to it in the conversation, and then heavy-handedly tell you what's going on, in case you didn't get it. And it didn't happen a lot in the movie, but it happened enough that I was kind of like, ugh, come on, again? And just overall, this had really fluid storytelling. Whoever did the screenplay and is directing and producing this really knew what they were getting into and really wanted to do a good job with it, and it really shows through. So I'm just going to jump in and do a quick wrap up here. In terms of a book to movie adaptation, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. It wasn't perfect, but it was so close. Very true to the source material. It kept a lot more than the earlier film. Literally the only thing that's keeping me from doing a 4 out of 5 is because they did cut the story in half. Granted, I understand why they did it, and that we're probably going to get 2 good movies versus one kind of iffy movie out of it because of that, but it's the only thing that really kept me from doing a 5 out of 5. It's completely subjective. I know a lot of people probably won't agree with me. You, dear viewer, probably won't agree with me, but that's the only thing holding me back. And in terms of a movie, I'm also giving this a 4 out of 5. It had great pacing, good storytelling, really fluid progression, and just overall was incredibly well produced. The cast did an amazing job bringing these characters to life, despite the heavy-handed, awkward dialogue that they sometimes had. And I really enjoyed the actors and actresses in these roles, and I am really excited to really honestly watch the second one if or when it ever comes out. So yeah, I'm going to leave it here. I'll leave you here. Again, the 1984 book review and then the book review are listed in the description below, and I'll include one or both of them as end cards here once I'm done talking, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.